everyone, how are you? Thanks for stopping by for today's video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Kat. I read primarily romance novels and love to talk about them here on my channel. My channel is my passion project where I like to support the authors that I've read by doing a video like this. The book we're going to talk about today is called Stepsister by Stacy Mcwilliams. I did a video on the previous book, which is Stepbrother, so keep that in mind. If you watch this video before you have read that book or watched that video, you might get spoilers. It's not my intention. I don't like to give spoilers here on my channel, but keep that in mind. Also, my dog is sitting right at my feet, as she always is when I'm filming, so if you hear a little crunching, she's actually chewing on her bone that she has, and she wants to be with me, so if I leave her outside of the office where I film, she'll sit there and whine because she is my shadow. So I apologize in advance if you hear a little bit of something in the background. Let's get into Stepsister. If you saw my previous video on Stepsister, you know that I was completely taken aback by that book. I will include that video in the description box below, and if I remember, I will put it in a card above so you can check that out as well, because oh my gosh, that book knocked me off my feet. I really thought I knew where we were going in that book. I was not happy about it. I was feeling so protective and so devastated over Bailey and Cooper's relationship in that book, literally until I got to the very end. Stacy shocked the heck out of me, and since then I could not wait to get my hands on this book. I noticed right off the bat that the chapter headings are broken hearts in this book. I didn't go back to look to see if it was like that in Stepbrother as well, but I thought, oh no, that doesn't bode well for Bailey or Cooper, and that's gonna make me sad. Stepsister is told from Cooper's perspective. I really wondered if I could like him, if I could see past everything, and I'm getting teary about it. I really was teary throughout this whole book. I'll admit it. My heart was just in a very sad place because I didn't know what was going to happen with them, and I love that. Of course we do, right? I want a book to bring out these kind of emotions in me, but I didn't know if I could like Cooper. I didn't know if he could redeem himself enough. I wanted to read it because I felt protective and adored Bailey so much. I had no expectations really of Cooper, even though that last chapter of Stepbrother I was shocked with. I didn't know how I felt about him going into this. Well, I should take that back. I knew how I felt about him, but I wanted to see if Stacy could change my mind. We do know that because of the way Stepsister ended, that things are not as they seem with Cooper. Okay, I kicked Macy out because she was making a whole lot of noise, so hopefully it will be quiet and you won't hear her whining at the door because now she's sitting outside the door. Anyway, like I was saying, we know that things are not as they seem with Cooper, but that still didn't mean that I knew where we were going and what Stepsister had in store for us. But something that helped me kind of take a deep breath and get ready for the rest of the book are a couple different passages. The first one, Cooper says, I couldn't ruin her future. I'd already ruined her past. I was ruining everything with her, and I hated myself for it. And the next one, Cooper says, some guy is gonna give you the world and treat you like a queen. I'm only sorry it's not me. Your arms are the only place I've ever felt at home, but I can't be the guy who gives you everything. I liked the first passage. This passage was like, okay, that sounds like typical Cooper. And then there was this next one. I turned to walk away from her. Every step caused me physical pain, and I had to force myself to keep my eyes forward. If I looked back, I'd never leave. Okay, we're getting a little more insight into how he really feels. as we get further into the book, we realize there's so much going on behind the scenes, so to speak, or really it's more just so much more going on from Cooper's perspective. Stuff we didn't really know. We got little glimpses, a little bit about other things keeping them apart, but there's so much more. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief, but yet that didn't mean necessarily that I liked Cooper. It just meant I understood his actions. We learn that, well, we already know, and I think I mentioned in my previous video, that Cooper's dad, Sean, is kind of the ringleader behind a lot of it, and we do not like him. He was terrible to Bailey. He was terrible to his two own children, Zane and Cooper. There's a lot going on with him. He's not likable. There's nothing good about him. And I wondered, what was the problem? He's so conniving. He's so manipulative. He's cunning. He's cutthroat. He's vicious. I don't think Stacy needed to give us more about him. We just knew he was the bad guy. It hurt my heart for Cooper and Zane to have a father like that. We'd learn a little bit about their mom, who had passed away already, hence Bailey's mom, Henry. I wanted to learn a little bit more about Cooper and Zane's mom. I realized that she wasn't that important to the story. That was the past. But I think it would have helped me embrace Cooper, to know that he had a depth to his emotions and his feelings in a positive way, and not all of the negative that seemed to surround him. I still had a lot of questions about him as the book went on. He did not win me over easy at all. Cooper is having a conversation with his friend Pete, who I think we knew Pete a little bit in the previous book. We see more of Pete in this book. I think I liked Pete. We meet Sean, Cooper's dad's brother, so Cooper's uncle in this book, and he's like, his name's Jake. He's like the saving grace that Cooper needed in a very specific moment when Cooper makes a really big decision. He was exactly who Cooper needed, and I really liked him. And also Pete. So these were the two characters that I felt like Cooper had in his corner, that he needed in his corner to make the decisions that he ultimately made, which led him on a different path. But then Cooper had this conversation with Pete, and I was like, you're such a dog. And he talks about how he was never faithful to anybody. And his excuse was that because he couldn't have Bailey, he just messed around a lot with everybody else. That frustrated me. It didn't work in Cooper's favor when I read that. Then Cooper said this to Jake, and my mouth kind of fell open and my heart started beating faster. He says, I think about her all the time, and I've always wanted her. She's the kindest, most forgiving person I've ever met, and believe me, I was a complete shit to her. I screwed around so much because I couldn't have her. I couldn't have the one I wanted, and I was miserable, so I made it my mission to make her as miserable as I was. But in spite of that, she forgave me. She forgave me when I didn't go to her, when the date she was on put her in danger. She forgave me when I hit her with a ball because I was so pissed someone else was into her and I was jealous. I'll never deserve her, but I want to be the person she sees when she looks at me. She makes me want to be better, to do better. And she doesn't care about my looks, my job, or any of it. All she cares about is me. She sees the real me and not just who I pretend to be. And then Jake asks if she knows how Cooper feels. And he says, no, I pushed her away because I was worried about what my dad would do to her, and I've regretted it every single day of my life since. Ultimately, having this conversation with Jake, like I said, forces Cooper to finally make a decision in his own future. And I was like, okay. And Cooper says, my breaths for the first time in a long time were easier. And I was optimistic about the future because I'd finally done it. I'd finally broken free. This is where I really started to see a change in him. This is where I started to connect with where he was in life and what had happened to him that brought him to make the decisions that he made regarding his own life, how he treated Bailey, and where the consequences of his actions brought him, and how I felt like maybe he really did understand that he had the choice to make different decisions, that he wasn't a teenager anymore. He was a grown-up man. He had his own job. Yes, there were people that were trying to manipulate him and try to keep him under their thumb, but he had the ability to not be there. He had his own 2 feet to stand on, and I felt like he was finally going to do that, and I needed him to do that. As you can imagine, Bailey is not easily convinced. That poor girl, the fact that she has been able to pick herself up, build a life for herself, was amazing. How many times she was knocked down and she picked herself back up. And I loved that about her. Cooper, with his new epiphany about standing on his own 2 feet and not being under someone else's thumb anymore and making his own decisions in life, wants to go after her. I don't doubt that he loves her. I didn't doubt that for a second. To show her and to prove to her and be worthy of her and be the man she needed in her corner. They are both so tortured, and sometimes you gotta wonder, is love that is so tortured and so hard like that worth it? I knew the rest of this book was not gonna be easy. And I knew because of what Bailey said. She reached out and slipped her fingers into mine, entwining our hands. Warmth raced through me from the tips of my fingers to the bottom of my soul, and I gave her fingers a gentle squeeze. I'm sorry, but I can't do this with you. I need more time. A tear rolled from her eye, and I reached over, wiping the moisture away with the pad of my thumb. I didn't speak because there was nothing to say. Her eyes said it all, and I knew in that moment I truly lost. I bobbed my head at her, too overcome with emotions to speak. You came all this way for me, and I'll never forget it, but I'm finally happy. I'm finally moving on from you, from us, and I need to give this a chance. She glanced around for a moment before she leaned over, pressing her soft lips to mine. It was a sweet kiss, a goodbye kiss, and I could feel the tears running down my cheeks, both from her and me. She pulled back, and I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to get a grip of my emotions as she stood up. Cooper, she breathed, and I looked up to see her smiling sadly down at me. I'll never regret a moment with you. I nodded, unable to speak, and she brushed her hands down her skirt before she turned away from me. Goodbye, Cooper. Oh my gosh. Talk about emotional, this poor girl. Wow. There were so many times where I was just like, oh, well, that's just typical Cooper. But yet, I was able to feel his pain, and I really did feel like they were meant to be together. I wondered if this was going to be the book that it was a happily ever after for them separately. And to be honest, I would have been okay with that. I think what happened to them and how certain people in their lives, the damage that they did to them, absolutely could have been irrevocable. I would have accepted that because I felt like we got to the point in the story where I would have accepted them both moving on. there was this little thing in the back of my head as I was reading that I thought I remembered reading in Stepbrother, but it wasn't getting brought up and wasn't getting brought up and wasn't getting brought up. And then all of a sudden, it's there. It didn't necessarily happen when I thought it was going to happen, but there was this extra little something that laid the groundwork to give us a happily ever after at the end of this book. And I'm so, so glad that Bailey got her happily ever after. I wouldn't say that I came around completely to Cooper, but there were definitely moments where he touched my heart, and I did want the best for him. So for how I felt about him all through Stepbrother, I consider that a win for sure. I love how Stacy surprised me with these two books. Absolutely amazing. Let me know if you have read either Stepbrother or Stepsister in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. It really does help my channel, and it helps this video get better visibility on YouTube. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.